Here's Professor Richard Wolff. How are you?
Okay, glad to be here, Lee. It's been a while, and so we have some catching up to do.
We absolutely do. And Trump likes to leave everyone's head spinning. Everything he's doing, attempting to do, laws he's trying to violate, all of the rest. But the main topic I want to get into is these tariffs. Because, he gets into office, he immediately makes economic war with allies and enemies alike. And I guess the three big ones in terms of these tariffs that he's announced have been Canada, Mexico, and China. Now, Mexico and Canada have both announced deals that will delay it, but delay it by 30 days or something. It doesn't seem like it's going to last. And I want to learn what it is Trump thinks he's achieving and what the actual end result will be.
Okay, let's go backwards. The end result of what has happened so far in terms of the economic realities is a large bag of nothing. What friends of mine love this phrase, a nothing burger. Well, that does it. You just got a nothing burger. You took apart the two pieces of bread and there was nothing there. And you just spent money and you got nothing. This is performance art. We have a president who's a good performer, who knows how to capture people's anxieties, fears, nerves. He sells things, or he could be a seller. It is stunningly nothing. Let's go over the details. Number one, you're quite right. The president comes hot out of the gate of inauguration, and he's already threatening, and that has to be understood, threatening Mexico and Canada because they've never been dealt with by the United States like this, or at least not for a long time, because there's in effect a treaty originally called the NAFTA, NAFTA, signed back in the 1990s by Clinton, which was a free trade zone of the three countries. And they all signed it, and here's what it meant. Any good produced in any one of the three countries, US, Mexico, Canada, could pass a border to any of the other ones, no charge, no tax. And by the way, a tariff is just the name of a particular tax. It's a tax that you pay if you buy something that had to be imported because it was made in another country. So if you buy French wine and it has a tariff, the way it works is your liquor store dealer sells you the bottle of French wine. You have to give the owner $10. Let's say that's what the French winemaker charges. And then on top of it, there's this tax called a tariff, let's say 5%. Okay, then the liquor store has to collect from you $10 to pay for the wine from France, plus 50 cents, 5% of $10, that the store owner has to send to Uncle Sam. A tariff is a tax paid by Americans to the American government. Do not be fooled or misled by politicians who either out of ignorance or out of malice try to suggest to you that when they impose a tariff, they impose it on another country. They can't do that. The American government cannot tax anybody but Americans. And a tariff is a tax on Americans who have to pay it to Uncle Sam. Now, it's interesting, even before I go on, to digest what I just said. For the last 100 years in the United States, the Republican Party has distinguished itself by being anti-tax. We're the party that won't charge you the tax. We'll cut the taxes. Mr. Trump is the tax president. Tariffs are taxes. His whole program is to do what the Republican Party before him took the opposite position on. That's very interesting, and you ought to think about what that might mean. All right, let's continue. We are the biggest market for Canadian exports. We are the biggest market for Mexican exports. So Mexico and Canada depend in a very, very big way on the United States. They have to have people in America buying what they have to sell, or it's going to hurt them, and hurt them a lot economically. All right, To put a 25% tariff, which is what the president proposed, means, if it goes into effect, that from one day to the next, from the day before it goes into effect to the day after, the price of everything coming into our country from either Mexico or Canada will cost 25% more than it did yesterday. You know what that means? Americans are going to buy fewer of them. They can't afford a 25%. Americans were screaming when the inflation rate was 9% in this country.
Yeah.
We're talking something orders of magnitude worse. So we're going to buy a lot less. We either do without, or we'll go and buy equivalent or maybe not so good things from other countries where there isn't a tariff that we have to worry about, because Mr. Trump singled out Canada and Mexico. It's not a general tariff that everything coming into the country might have to pay. You can do that, and Mr. Trump has threatened general tariffs that would apply to everybody. But in this case, because they're such long partners, it's out of the blue. There was no preparation. There was no conversation. There were no meetings held. I want to remind everyone, the United States is a signatory of the NAFTA agreement, which was rewritten and re-signed during Trump's first presidency between 2016 and 2020. Donald Trump's signature is on the treaty he just broke. Any other country looking at this would be out of its mind to make treaties with the United States, because not only did the U.S. break it, but no discussion, no meeting, no preparation, nothing. He just came down on these two countries with which we share thousands of miles of border, as if they were a hated enemy conveniently located, on the other side of the ocean. I mean, no one will understand. Only in America will there be mass media trying desperately to make this seem reasonable for the rest of the world. This is another sign of a rogue, weird country. And Americans who don't see that will be missing half the story.
It feels like an act of desperation. What is it he thinks? What is it he thinks he's achieving?
Well, I don't know what he thinks. Lord knows, don't let us go down that rabbit hole. But I can tell you what I think he is achieving. He's achieving what his campaigns achieved. America is broken. He's touching a nerve there. Most Americans think that one way or another. And I'm gonna fix it. I am Mr. Fix-It. All these other Democrats, they can't fix it. I can fix it. Vote for me. Look, the Democrats had shown most Americans that they can't fix it. It's true enough. In his first term, he didn't fix anything either.
Yeah.
But, if you're looking at a Democrat who hasn't fixed anything, a Democrat who says she's going to do what her predecessor did, and he didn't fix anything, and here's a guy who says, I'll fix it. But that means he has to be Mr. Fix-It. So he has to come out of the gate after his inauguration and show America, I'm hitting them and I'm doing this, and I'll whack the Chinese, and I'll scream at the president of Colombia. I will do, look at me. I'm a performance monkey. I'm out here fixing it. No one cares about the details. No one knows the history of Mexico or Canada. So there you have it. It's a show.
I guess he claims that you put tariffs on other countries, and then that will encourage corporations to have more workers and build more things in America, and that helps American workers. Does that ever happen?
No, tariffs have been around. This is painful, but I have to put on my hat as an economics professor. Tariffs have been around for centuries. There's nothing new about them. And because of that, every economics library you'll ever go to has reams and reams of books and articles all about tariffs. So we have lots of studies that tell us what tariffs can and cannot do. The reason Mr. Trump is using tariffs has nothing to do with how they work. He wouldn't know. He's not a student of this stuff. He's surrounded by advisors. Lord knows what they're telling him. But here's the reason he uses it. A few years ago, when no tariffs were being discussed, the United States Congress, mistakenly in my view, but gave the president the right to impose tariffs without going through the usual congressional approval and blah, blah, blah. You know, we have a War Powers Act that says the president cannot attack another country or drop a bomb without getting congressional approval. Well, the economic warfare, economic warfare isn't all that different. And I understand they may not abide by the law, but we don't even have a law. So Mr. Trump is free all by himself to whip around these tariffs. That's why he's doing it. He can be alone. He doesn't have to share the TV light with anybody else. I hit them today with a tariff, and then tomorrow them, and look at me whacking the bad guys around. Americans, and I ask them so often, they mostly don't know that a tariff is a tax put on Americans by the president, and the money goes to the American government. You're not whacking anybody else. You're whacking your own people. But the genius of Mr. Trump, and he gets it, you can put on a show where this kind of gets lost. Now, let me deal with the business with protecting American jobs, because that, if you allow me, is total bullshit. Only an ignoramus who doesn't know about this will fall for this one. But it's clever to say it. I get that. It's clever to say it. So let's take an example. A real example, so I'm not making it up. 15 years ago, all the automobile companies in the world began a competition. They all saw the writing on the wall. We're leaving fossil fuel, gasoline-powered cars, and we're going to go to electric cars, okay? And they all went to work to try to be the best winner of that competition, okay? We now have a winner. A winner, my guess is many of the folks watching this program never heard of the winner, so let me be the first to tell you. If you already know, well, you can enjoy it anyway. It's the BYD Corporation. B for boy, Y for yellow, D for dog. BYD. This is a Chinese automobile company. They have produced the best by quality and the cheapest. That's what the competition was about. They produced the best, cheapest car. If you're in the business of buying an electric car, either a car for your own use or, more importantly, an input because you need trucks or cars for whatever your business is, so you have to buy them to do your business. They're inputs. If you want the best, cheapest input, you would have to go and get the BYD car. You get a really good electric vehicle for maybe $30,000, which, if you know the market, is a good deal. Okay, what this meant was everyone else producing electric cars and trucks has got a serious competitor. It'll take a few years, but if they don't come up with a better car, they are going to be losers, and BYD is the winner. Mm-hmm. Okay. If you go to Europe, you'll see BYD cars and trucks all over the streets. If you go to many parts of the world, you'll see BYD. Here in the United States, not one. Now, why is that? Mr. Trump, when he was president, put an initial tariff, I believe about 27% on electric vehicles from China. Mr. Biden, not to be outdone, raised it to 100%. Which means if you're an American and you want to buy a BYD car or vehicle for 30 grand, here's what you'd have to do. You'd have to pay $30,000 to your dealer to get the car from China, and then your dealer would have to charge you an additional $30,000, 100%, which is money your dealer collects, but it's the tariff, and that money goes to Uncle Sam. China gets to $30,000, it charges everybody in the world. But you would have to pay $60,000. Guess what? You're not going to do it. You're going to settle for a not so good electric vehicle, which you can buy from an inferior producer, which includes, among others, Tesla or GM or Ford or Toyota or any of the others, because for you need to be competitive around the world. And all your competitors in Asia, Africa, Latin America, and Europe are able to have cheaper, better electric vehicles than you, poor American, can afford. And now here comes the punchline. When the tariff against the electric cars were put in effect, whoever did it, Mr. Biden in one case, Mr. Trump in another, got bigger donations from Ford and GM and maybe Toyota because they were protected. They know they can charge $50,000 for a less good electric vehicle because they're protected. We can't buy the $30,000 Chinese vehicle because we have to pay the 100% tariff on top of it. So we won't buy the Chinese car. We'll buy the inferior car. That's great for General Motors and Ford. And maybe they will share their good fortune by not firing their workers, so it protects the auto workers, which is why Sean Fain, the head of the United Auto Workers, supports these tariffs. But for every other American producer, the producers of, I don't know, ice cream cones or glasses or software programs who need a truck to bring their raw materials to their workplace and a truck to take them to the stores. All the competitors of the United States out in the world are able to buy their trucks, the best quality, for $30,000, whereas their American competitor, schmuck that he is, has to pay $60,000 if he wants the same quality, or settle for only $50,000 for an inferior quality. You know what that means? It means that what this does is disadvantage 99.9% of American producers relative to their overseas competitors. Many of them are going to go out of business. And when they do, they're going to fire their workers. So here comes a $64,000 question. Will the number of automobile factory jobs protected be more or less than all the other jobs lost by having the damage done to the American producers from being unable, like their competitors, to access for $30,000 the best electric vehicle? And the answer is nobody knows that. That would take 6 months of research, and then you couldn't be all that sure. But there is no reason, none, to assume that the number of people whose job is protected is greater than the number of people whose job is jeopardized by the tariff. An honest politician would tell you that. We don't have that kind of politician. So here's a tragedy. Not only do the Republicans act as though they're protecting jobs, but the Democrats don't mock it, which they could do.
Right.
If I can explain it in 10 minutes, then I can sit down and write it out, and it would be less than a page to make the point. This is not complicated. This is not difficult.
If this may be, I don't know if it's too large of a question for the last 5 minutes I have you, but what is something that Trump or any president could do to help actual American workers fairly quickly? Like, what is it Trump should be doing if he actually wanted to help Americans?
What he ought to be doing is figuring out that a whole lot of the problems of the United States economically, and man, are they mounting and mounting fast. They ought to have the courage to say, whatever else we thought might be the problem, could it be that we organize our business so a tiny group of people sitting at the top, the owner, the guy who started the business, or in a corporation, which is where most of our economy is, the board of directors of 10 or 15 people, make all the decisions, what to produce, what technology to use, where to do the production, and what to do with the product. They make the decision, and guess what? They're in it to make money for themselves. That's why corporations get so much money at the top, because those are the people who decide who gets. Maybe our problem is, dare I say it, that we have a capitalist system which is dragging us down. This is a very serious issue, and nobody discusses it. Let me take one more minute. I would argue, I do argue all the time, that we are also an empire that is now declining. Our best years are behind us as an empire. That's the truth. Every empire that ever happened went up, and then it went down. We went up. Now we're going down. Nobody's fault. It's the way it works. But when you're going down, it's a lot less fun than when you're going up. And when you're going down, there are usually signs like in the Vietnam War, you went to war against the Communist Party of North Vietnam. You lost the war, and Vietnam has been run by that party ever since. Hello. A little while later, you fought a war in Afghanistan against the Taliban. You know who runs the Taliban now? Excuse me, who runs Afghanistan? It's the Taliban. We lost, they won. In Iraq, we didn't win anything. And in Ukraine, we're in the middle of losing. That's not usually how empires succeed. That's how empires go down. And maybe you ought to say, Jesus, if we're going down, can we sit down with the country that's coming up and work out a livable deal? The United States and Britain were in this situation. After our Revolutionary War, we came up, they went down. We fought 2 wars. The United States won them. The British lost them. They went, oh my goodness. We sat down and they cut a deal. Now, I don't admire the deal. The deal was Britain gets every part of the world except the Western Hemisphere. You in America, you get the Western Hemisphere. We call that the Monroe Doctrine, and we referred to that as our manifest destiny. Bullshit. That was a deal cut between the rising and the falling. We ought to sit down with the Chinese and at least try to do it. What is the cost? The alternative is hostility between 2 nuclear powers. We all know where that could go. So let's ask questions we haven't dared to. That's what a courageous new politics would involve, not these aimless, pointless, nasty disputes between one group of politicians, I'm being polite, and another.
Thank you so much, Professor. You always have an excellent new book out there. What's the latest one?
It's called Understanding Capitalism. It's basically an argument that shows why we ought to be talking about our system. You know, we talk about our education system. We talk about our police system. We talk about our prison. We look at them, which is healthy, and see whether we can do better. But what in the world exempts the economics? Why is capitalism... You know, I don't know of any place in the
It's
Bible
religion.
or the Quran.
Religion.
That's right. It is. Except it has no book. The Bible doesn't say, thou shalt be a capitalist. Don't do that.
Well, everyone should check out that book and your videos. Thank you so much, Professor, for taking the time.
My pleasure, Lee. Look forward to doing it again.
Absolutely.